Kuro no Juusan is an interactive visual novel adventure game that was released for the PlayStation in Japan in 1996. And this game is divided into a number of different chapters that focuses mainly on telling ghost stories, that uses kind of like live action or live sequences with real life people to tell unique and scary style story elements. So there's a number of different game modes that are available, and each of them have their own stories that you can get involved with. And the game is very dialogue heavy, so it doesn't really use video sequences as such. It focuses more on photographs and still images, but has a text overlay. But at various points in the game you will be required to make choices, and depending on those choices will have a direct impact and influence on the future progression of the actual story, which can result in a multitude of different endings. Now, with regards to the game, due to the language barrier, because it's Japanese only, many people coming into these type of games won't really understand the concept of what's going on. But during that time in Japan, the PlayStation had become home for a multitude of different experimental and obscure type of games that were being developed and released at that time. And in Japan specifically, they were visual novel games were quite popular within that region, and it's easy to see why, because there was a multitude of them released on various different consoles, and especially on the PlayStation. If you look at the multitude of Japanese games that were released on the console, and for the most part many of these games are completely oblivious to many of us because we wouldn't even have known they existed, and in most cases these type of games wouldn't appeal to the mass amount of audiences that are out there. They would only appeal to a certain type of player that likes engaging with stories and that likes to understand various concepts of ideas and so forth. But the PS1 has an incredible amount of visual novel games that would have been released in Japan only, but it's also a case that the majority of these games are completely unknown to many. The thing with this game is as well, even from spending time playing it, recording this video, because of the language and because it's in Japanese, it is hard to understand really what's going on. So it's a case of just going through the game and just understanding the various visual references that you will witness. So it kind of gives you an idea of how to put all of the pieces together. But it's another one of those games, as with many of these visual novels, they could definitely do with some sort of fan translation that will help you to engage with the story a lot more so. But then it really depends on the player, because the majority of players in the European regions or in Western audiences wouldn't be really familiar or wouldn't consider these games to be really popular, but they are clearly popular in Japan, and it shows because the amount of them that was released during that time. Even moving on to the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 2 has a ridiculous amount of visual novels that were released in Japan also. From having spending time looking at various games and doing a bit of research, it's ridiculous and it's crazy the amount of these type of games that have been released over the years on both consoles. It's quite insane really. But then I suppose that adds to the fact with the PlayStation 1 and the PS2 having some of the biggest libraries of games ever seen among consoles, and the majority of them would be down to these experimental style of games that most of us probably don't even know or have never even played before. But it's an interesting concept. It does tell a unique story, while it does focus on ghost stories primarily, which is definitely different and something that is worth looking into. That does try to present an atmosphere all on its own, but it tries to do it through visual storytelling more than anything else. So for that respect alone, it is worthwhile checking out. Now, even though you'll struggle to understand the language barrier, but for those that can understand the language, they will definitely get something out of it. But it really just depends on your own tastes and preferences. But I would love to know your thoughts on this type of game if you have played it yourself, and do you enjoy these early versions of interactive novels that would have been seen on the PlayStation or even on the PS2 back in the day? So I'd love to hear whatever stories you do have of these games, so be sure to share them down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated of future videos. And if you would want to see more gameplay of this game in action, then check out this next video here on screen to see a full playthrough of the game, so you can see what you think for yourself. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.